Hello and welcome to Press Party, where we turn the tables and talk about the media. I'm your host, Katie Eastman. 60 Minutes apologizes for misleading everyone on their story about Benghazi. But was their apology enough? And a reporter does a mammogram on national TV, and she had no idea the life she saved would be her own. Two local newspapers, two very different stories. The difference in the coverage of Menino taking a job at Boston University. And Time Magazine's latest cover is quite controversial. We'll talk about the elephant in the room. Now let's introduce our panel. We have first off Suffolk University Chair of Communications and Journalism, Dr. Bob Rosenthal. Next to him, Herald columnist Joe Battenfeld. For the first time on our show, we have Dave Gerzoff, and he is a social media professor at Emerson College. And as always, Jacqueline Cashman, co-host of Boston Herald Radio's Morning Meeting. For our first topic, a major mistake on a show that's usually known for its reliability. 60 Minutes messed up, and they made their first retraction since 2004 when they realized the papers they cited about George Bush's military service were fake. Press Party's Erica Mora takes a look at their latest apology.
I didn't even have to go into the room to see who it was.
It was a horrific account.
It was the ambassador. He was dead.
Of the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Benghazi. Shortly after the story aired on the news magazine, The Washington Post yanked the curtains. Jones was actually Dylan Davies, the author of a book about the night's events, and a man the FBI said gave a different account of the attack in a report.
And today, the truth is that we made a mistake.
It took only a week for CBS to retract the story. Lara Logan appeared on the network's morning show.
We realized that we no longer had confidence in our source.
It was only the beginning of an apology. More details would come on Sunday's edition of the award-winning program, Logan implied during her interview.
We end our broadcast tonight with a correction.
The apology came at the end of the broadcast with 1 minute and 25 seconds dedicated to explaining.
And it was a mistake to include him in our report. For that, we are very sorry.
Culpa.
Critics slammed the program. The Twitter world demanded more information on how the show could have aired the story so confidently and how it was vetted in the first place. Others said the time dedicated to the apology, a fragment of the show, was inadequate. For Press Party, I'm Erica Mora.
All right, now this is a difficult topic to ask questions about because, Dr. Bob, if I were to ask you if you knew what Lara Logan knew, would you have reported it? It's hard to answer because we don't know what she knew.
Exactly, and that's part of the problem. They haven't allowed that information to come out yet. They've talked about the fact that they've made a mistake and they've owned up to it, and they've done that very well. They've had a very orchestrated approach to doing it, but they admit that they made a mistake. The problem is we really don't know when they knew information. We don't know exactly what information they knew, and there had been some stories out beforehand that their source could be impeachable.
She did say, though, that they were unaware of that internal report that indicated that he said something different before. So I think if they had that report, they probably shouldn't have aired it, and they maybe wouldn't have. But at the same time, I mean, how do you know, not to be too easy on CBS, but it seemed like the guy was legitimate, but there was a little, like Dr. Bob said, some questions about his story before that. So he should have been really checked out. And it's funny because last night I was watching this story of CBS when they reported JFK's assassination, and Walter Cronkite back then had all this information that said he was dead, and he held back reporting it. A lot of people think he was the first one to report it. He wasn't. He held back, and it showed you how different things have become.
And that's the thing, but CBS still to this day really works hard to verify their information.
I think that's why it's so unfortunate for them, because everybody looks to 60 Minutes as the pillar of the journalism community, and that's where the dream of any journalist is to work for that program because it is so well respected. So I think that is unfortunate. What I did like, though, is that last Friday on the morning show, it was almost like a news conference with the CBS anchor and Lara Logan. I mean, she really pressed her. I mean, she didn't really give her a break, which I liked.
And that was a better apology than what we saw at the end of 60 Minutes. Dave, you are on Twitter all the time. You know everything about social media. What does this kind of mistake do to a news organization?
Well, first off, let's just start with the situation itself. It's a war zone situation. It's very remote. It's one guy. So to defend them a little bit, I would say that when you're looking at the facts of this, it was very easy for this guy to pull a fast one on them. So that's the first thing. On the social media side of things, this spread very quickly, and their apology also spread very quickly. This is one mistake they made in 10 years. That's one in 10 years. That's pretty good.
But once you make that, I mean, it goes viral. People are so quick today to just say, oh my God, this is terrible. How could you do
Well,
this?
there are also reports out there on Politico and different sites that say, guess what? Lara Logan's reporting was even worse than that because she keeps on blaming Al-Qaeda for the attack in Benghazi, and that they're saying that hasn't been confirmed yet. So there are actually more holes in the story. And to the 10-year point, we've only found out one mistake in the last 10 years. It doesn't mean that's the only mistake that's been made.
And it's a pretty big mistake, too, and I do think it's very damaging to 60 Minutes. It's hard to recover from one of these things. That being said, the Bush mistake that Dan Rather made was way worse than this, I have to say.
Forged papers.
Yeah,
totally
that was bad.
What
That
did you
was
want to
really
say,
bad.
Dr. Bob?
But the issue here is you have to take, at some point in time, you've got to fish or cut bait, right? So, for example, back with Watergate, the Washington Post took some risk by publishing because they had a second source that was questionable, et cetera. So, at some point in time, you have to make a judgment call based on your news instincts. And I think CBS probably made the right call given the information that they had. Unfortunately, mistakes do happen. It's a human enterprise.
And there's tremendous competition, to, as we know these days, that stuff goes out on the air that wouldn't go out on the air before. And like you said, in social media, when a mistake happens or when a report comes out, people are fishing immediately to disprove that story, and they eventually succeeded. It didn't take much time before CBS had to apologize because of social media.
And there was another thing with the CBS thing. They had a book deal going on that's
They
in
did.
somehow relation to CBS that was
Well,
talking
the book
about
company
this.
they owned, publishing
Published
company,
his
was
book.
publishing this guy's book. So they had a financial incentive as well, which is very questionable.
And they didn't talk about that in the story, which
No.
they should have exposed and should have just said as a caveat, we do have, there is a conflict here and we want to let you know about that, which they didn't do.
So this is a true crisis for 60 Minutes, and I think they're handling it really well. And long term, I think their credibility actually has the ability to go up because they're self-checking. They're coming out and they're taking responsibility for some poor reporting, which, like I said before, is very far and few between from what we know.
For a lot of news stations. Well, I think we'll have to wait until we see what comes out of the internal investigation that they're doing. Thanks, everyone, and don't forget to let us know what you think. What do you expect from the news when it comes to corrections? Tweet us with the Press Party hashtag and leave a comment below. Our next segment, a national anchor raises awareness for breast cancer, never knowing the impact it would have on her own life.